Stephen wakes up from dreaming about the fight he had as Moon Knight. He attempts to speak to Marc in the mirror, to no avail. As he arrives at the museum, he notices security guard JB roping off the exhibit area. Stephen asks JB if he can watch the security footage with him, as he may know the culprit. JB agrees, and they watch the tape. It only shows Stephen cowering by an exhibit and before getting up to run from unseen pursuers. When he is seen running into the bathrooms, JB calls him out for messing up the loose. Stephen tries to describe the demon jackal that was chasing him, but JB doesn't believe him. Stephen then watches the surveillance video of Marc leaving in Stephen's body. The manager tells Stephen that the museum does not plan to press charges, and offers to make him an appointment at a treatment facility. He hands back his name tag and accepts his termination. After talking to the gold mime, Stephen decides to investigate the mysteries of his apartment. He visits a storage facility where the attendant immediately recognizes him and escorts him to his locker. When Stephen walks in, he notices a small cot, several heavy-duty boxes, and a duffel bag containing a handgun, money, and a U.S. passport for Marc Spector, born in Illinois and bearing the same resemblance as Stephen. He also finds the scarab he had stolen in the first episode. It opens and begins to hover over his hand, aiming in a specific direction. As Stephen speaks to himself to comprehend the situation, Marc calls to him. He apologizes for giving Stephen so much information all at once, but tells him that he can help if Stephen goes to sleep on the cot so he can possess him. Stephen refuses without an explanation. Marc tells him that he is the avatar of Khonshu, Egypt's moon god. Stephen leaves the storage facility and is chased again by the jackal. As he turns a corner, he approaches Khonshu, who demands he give it back. Stephen runs out of the facility screaming and falls down on the road in front of a scooter being driven by Layla. She only knows Stephen's body as Marc and thinks Stephen is an alias and that he turned on the phone so she could locate him. She expresses how worried she has been for his safety, in spite of him having the suit. She reminds him that she is his wife, and that he is an American. He has her take him back to his flat. Marc tells Stephen that Layla shouldn't be in the apartment. She looks around and finds a book of poetry that she and Stephen recite together, after which she notes that the poet is her favorite. She impresses Stephen with her knowledge of hieroglyphics. She presents him with the divorce papers Marc had wanted her to get, but Stephen has no reason to sign them. He attempts to appeal to her by showing her what was in the bag, as Marc shouts at him to stop and get her out of there. As he is about to show her the scarab, Marc warns that he will get her killed. As Stephen hesitates, Marc continues to tell him that as he shows her the scarab, he is responsible when they come after her. Having lost her patience, Layla shoves Stephen to the side very strongly and finds it. She says the scarab points to the Ushbatai of Ammit, an item they fought side by side for. Stephen tells Layla how scared he is and pleads for her help. At that moment, two police officers knock on the door and let themselves in. Layla manages to hide herself as the two look around, one discovering a paperweight that Stephen claims to have gotten at the paperweight shop. Stephen is informed that he is in possession of a stolen item. As he denies it, his passport is found and Stephen is handcuffed and put in the back seat. As they ride, the officer in the passenger seat finds information about Marc Spector and an Egyptian dig he and some others ambushed. The aftermath presents archaeologists zip-tied and shot execution style. He is driven to a back alley and left in the car alone. He realizes where he is when he notices someone with a tattoo like the followers of Ammit. Marc tries to get Stephen to submit to him, but they are interrupted by Arthur. Arthur uncuffs Stephen and suggests that the voices in his head were what caused the scales to not balance in the last episode. Stephen sees Khonshu behind Arthur, and hears him telling him to kill Arthur. He conveys this message to Arthur, who admits that he can no longer see nor hear Khonshu. Arthur offers to take Stephen for a walk, and Khonshu sends a wind through the alley to dissuade him. Arthur tells Stephen that the winds are all Khonshu can do without him. Arthur tells Stephen how the neighborhood used to have a very high crime rate, but since he made everyone a follower of Ammit, they leave their doors unlocked. Arthur shows Stephen around, much to the chagrin of Khonshu, who blows away Stephen's food. Arthur describes Khonshu as a banished god while Khonshu confidently defends his actions and purpose to Stephen, proclaiming himself to be real justice. Arthur claims to have been the avatar of Khonshu prior to Marc. Arthur criticizes Khonshu for only enacting vengeance upon those who have already acted upon their ill desires, but Ammit casts her judgment preliminarily. He explains to Stephen that the scarab will help them find Amit's tomb. While attempting to goad Stephen into surrendering to Marc, Arthur is asked how Amit's judgment is any different than a prejudiced act against an innocent person. As a hypothetical, Stephen asks if Amit would judge a child and kill it for what it may do in 30 years. Arthur likens the killing of a future criminal to the amputation of a diseased limb, bad for the part, better for the whole. Stephen is appalled by this reasoning, and outright refuses to help Arthur anymore. Arthur attempts to threaten Stephen, but then Layla shows up. As she approaches Arthur feigning that she will relinquish the scarab, she tells Stephen to summon the suit. When he doesn't understand, she gives him the scarab and runs with him. Arthur uses Amit's power to summon another jackal. While Layla attempts to explain to Stephen that only he can summon the suit, Marc begins to tell him that he needs to submit. When Stephen hesitates, the jackal breaks in but can only be seen by him. Stephen is thrown from a window and manages to summon the Moon Knight suit without giving Marc control. As Stephen is attacked by the invisible jackal, Layla tries to save him. Stephen removes his overcoat and takes the jackal on in the middle of the street, while passers-by only see the Moon Knight moving all around alone. Stephen lets Marc take control and go full Moon Knight. Layla tells him to get it out of here. MK eventually impales the jackal before transforming back into Stephen, who notices the scarab is gone. A man picks up the scarab as Layla watches from her scooter. Arthur tells the man that the scarab belongs to him. After the man willingly returns it to him, Arthur kills him. Elsewhere, Marc explains the possession rules to Stephen. He tells Stephen that the reason his power is changing is because Khonshu wants to use Layla's body as his new avatar, and that's why he ran away and asked her for the divorce. Stephen is furious with how Marc and tells him how he will never allow Marc to take control of him again. Furious, Marc smashes the reflection where he spoke to Stephen. Khonshu appears and scolds Marc for his actions and for altering the terms of their deal. Khonshu reminds Marc that if he will no longer be the avatar, he may not like Khonshu's next candidate. Marc asks Khonshu where they are going. Stephen wakes up hungover in a hotel in Giza.